Hello, Romantics. I'm Sarah Gomez, author, romance lover, and host. You're listening to Romancing the Story, a podcast centered around writing, reading, and story structure, all with a twist of romance. We're at episode 70. And on today's episode, I speak with best-selling and award-winning author Marcy Pusey about the balance between artificial intelligence and artistic integrity, why creativity is so important to the brain, and what the impacts of AI could be for the writing community. This is such an important topic in the creative community at large, since AI is evolving and getting more prominent. I searched for experts after hearing about a controversial workshop held by Romance Writers of America about using AI to help write a book. I posed a question of, where do we draw a line with AI as authors, and how can we be more informed to make those decisions? I was so fortunate to come across Marcy, who is a champion of the human voice, and helped me discover the pivotal difference between AI-generated and AI-assisted. She also assisted as a guide in looking at where to find alignment in your own work and who we want to be as authors. On the other side, she provided suggestions of where AI can be used without compromising your unique writing voice. This is a hefty episode with awesome takeaways, but it ultimately boils down to how we choose to harness AI responsibly and honestly for a creative process within the boundaries of our alignment as a writer. Links to connect to Marcy, find her books, as well as other media mentioned will be listed in the episode description. Marcy is wonderfully generous and provided some free resources for listeners that I have included in the episode description. Separately, I do use some Amazon affiliate links for books, so if you buy through the link, it helps the podcast and is always appreciated. With that said, let's jump right in. Welcome, story coach and best-selling award-winning author Marcy Pusey. Yay!
Hi, thank you.
Now, Marcy, I happened just to come across some awesome talks that you've been doing, about all this authors and writing and even a little bit of AI. So in case listeners don't know, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and your writing?
Yeah. So I started out just as a kid who wrote, and at the time, didn't know you could grow up and become an author. And so I became a therapist, which is wonderful. But much later in life, and especially when the industry changed a lot, I learned that I could be an author. So since learning, this is the short version, I've published 19 and counting books. The first ones of those were through small presses. And then since then, I've independently published a lot of books. And in that process, got asked, how was I doing it? How did they look so good? I mean, they're award-winning, they're best-selling. And so I began to start helping people to the degree that I needed to make it a business because it was taking so much of my time. So now I run a business, Mita Mare Ponte Press. I do custom publishing for people. And there's a few different ways I do that, where I can do it for people, like I'm doing their publishing for them. I do done with you, where I hold someone's hand through it. And I do a lot of story and writing coaching because that therapeutic piece that comes in, I've learned so much about why the brain gets stuck in places anywhere in the process. And I nerd out on helping people see what's really going on when they think they have writer's block and getting unstuck. So I run writers retreats, do online writing communities, and then help people publish. And then on the side, I have a little tiny therapy practice.
Well, and that's, it is. It's such you wouldn't think it goes hand in hand, but it does. It really does. Like the therapeutic piece, being a therapist and writing, that's something I know that, we've incorporated in our household as part of our practice for therapy and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's just it's so great to kind of just shut off all the other noise and just be creative.
For the longest time, to your point, I had no idea how those two would converge. And now I can't unsee it. So I have a certification in trauma and resilience as well. And as a result of having lived through trauma and raised trauma, and there's books on that. But as I dug deep into understanding how do we heal this? How do we recover from traumatic events and experiences? So much of it is in the uncensored parts of our sensory living. That was a lot of censor in there. But when we free write, when we free move, when we do creative play, Play-Doh, dance, drumming, like whatever, moving outside in nature, all that stuff that doesn't require words or for us to censor activates a part of our brain where a lot of those things are stuck. And so then I got to see how people telling their stories, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, adult, children, doesn't matter, activates a part of our brain that doesn't know how to be heard any other way. And we haven't been taught to listen to that very well. So I get to help people listen better to that part when it's speaking. And I love doing that with writers or people who have something they want to say and helping them become writers to get that message out.
Now, with all the therapeutic value of writing, and
Mhm.
we love to write as writers, but where does like AI come in the mix? See, that's kind of the
Mhm.
question I wanted to pose to you today, because
Yeah.
the world of publishing is constantly shifting, and sometimes in ways we can never predict. Enter AI writing. My husband actually is in finance, and they've been actually using it for a year and a half, from what I understand. And I work in the entertainment business and video games, so I've heard
Yeah.
stuff that they've been using it too. I came across your discussion with
Yeah.
AI writing and stuff like that on your Instagram live, and I thought it was so fascinating because you frame it in a way that it's ethical
Yeah.
and that it's such a divisive topic, no matter how you spin it. But I was so intrigued that you presented it as an ethical way to
Yeah.
use. I love that idea because I feel like there's room in there. There's wiggle room to use it.
Yeah.
So, how do you define ethical in regard to
Yeah.
writing?
I love that question. And there's so much nuance even in there. So I have to
Mhm.
understand that what I consider ethical may not be someone else's ethics.
Mhm.
And so you're right. There's room then to decide that for yourself. But I think that what helps is if we have good information in which to inform our ethics. So for me, having been in the industry a long time, very well connected to illustrators, designers, editors. I have all these people in my network because I publish all the time. I use them. And as a result of that, I've been able to listen as all of this AI was becoming a bigger part of our industry. And what I've heard and now seen and understand to be true is that when we use AI to generate content, it is scraping from existing content on the internet, whether it's artwork, photography, or text. And all of that we've known is the intellectual property of somebody else. And as AI has begun to scrape the internet, it hasn't been crediting people. It doesn't, it even tells you if you try to have it cite something that the information could be wrong, because really it's just bringing in pre-existing things to make it work. Because I care about not stealing from people, because I care about creatives, artists being properly compensated and credited. And compensation is huge because that's their life work. Ethically, for me, would be to not use AI in any form that is going to steal the intellectual property of anyone else. Where I'm not going to be in a situation where I could even legally be sued for copyright infringement, which is happening right now in the industry. OpenAI and a couple others have been sued by the New York Times and John Grisham and a number of other big names for copyright infringement because AI isn't like, oh, don't take from New York Times. Like it doesn't matter. It's grabbing content and putting it together. So the difference for me between AI generated and AI assisted would be that generation is I'm saying, hey, can you write a book for me in a weekend? Because I'm in this course that's teaching me how to do it. And it writes a book for you. Well, it just took words and concepts and ideas that belong to other people and gave you a book that you're going to sell for commercial use and take credit for. To
Mhm.
me, that's unethical. If it's a children's picture book and you're saying create the art for my children's picture book, I know personally artists who have seen their work in AI generated artwork and they're not getting credited or compensated. So that's not just a story going around. I know people personally who've seen that happen. So okay, that's intellectual property that belongs to someone else that's being used without permission, copyright infringement, no bueno, right? So,
Mhm.
so again, for me, ethically, no, I'm not going to steal from artists either. That's AI generated. AI assisted might be, hey, I've already written this book, or I'm working on this chapter. Can you help me outline it? Here are my concepts, right? You can have it assist you. I need to write an author bio. What information do you need from me to write an author bio? And AI will actually ask you questions, and then you can answer the questions and it'll help you with a bio. The difference is you're giving it the content to work with versus having it create content for you. So that's my ethical standard there is I won't do anything that's taking from the intellectual property of someone else by generating new content for me. I'll only have it either help me make something, I'll only have it make my own things better or work through my own content.
Yeah, it seems like a very small word difference, but it's a huge concept change
Yeah.
from one
And
to the
Amazon
other.
cares about that. Yeah.
Yes.
So we
And
can
I
get
think
into that.
readers do too.
Yeah. No, that's so great because I honestly I don't want to read an AI generated book. I want to read a book a human wrote because again, have such a value for the human voice, which is probably like back to my values and my own therapeutic experience. I'm about championing voices, not robots. And so if I know a book is AI generated, I'm not interested. I don't even know if the facts are true because it says we don't know. Like, right? And then that person
Right.
is positioning themselves to be an expert in content that's not theirs. And I don't want to support that. So that may not be every reader, but that is me. I want the human spirit to still be part of the message that I am putting into my own body, my own mind. And there's a number of readers like that as well.
I'm with you 100% because I feel like it can be used as a tool, but at the same time,
Yes.
we do want the voices to flourish,
Yeah.
like, and there's just the creative mind. There's nothing quite like that. You
No.
can't replicate that.
Uh-uh.
So, but you know what, too? It's so funny you mentioned that the scraping of like kind of going out in the ether and scraping all the information and kind of distilling it down. That was something actually I read on Twitter/X this
Yeah.
morning
Yeah.
was that someone who was in academics had mentioned all of my students used AI to write this paper, and I am literally reading the same paper over and over and over and over and
Yes.
over again.
You know what's crazy? I actually
Mhm.
saw that firsthand. My daughter was texting me asking for prompts, writing prompts for script
Hmm.
writing. She wanted to like
Oh.
do writing a script. She's 14 and she's my daughter. And so I was like, just get on AI and ask, like just for prompt ideas to get your brain going, right?
Mhm.
And so she was like, no, I don't want to. I want your ideas. And I was in the middle of stuff. I'm like, I don't feel creative right now. So I texted my friend. I was like, do you have any prompts? And so he gets on AI and he's like, here, just send her these.
Oh my
One of
God.
the prompts that he sent me that I sent her, she took a screenshot of her. So she ended up getting on AI. They were the same prompt. He's in Michigan. We're in California,
Hmm.
separately asking these questions. And it was like slightly worded differently, but the same. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, right? So you've got 100 authors out there asking for prompts. They all just got the same prompt. Now we're gonna have 100 books based on, okay, in different voices, maybe, unless you had AI write it for you. But essentially, like, we're not getting new content. It's not just being creative, right? It's pulling from what exists and feeding that to everyone, which brings us to like, how do we protect our own work then? Right. In
Hmm.
a sense, like, how do we use it safely? I talk about ethically, but how do we use AI safely? Because I know some authors avoid it because well, then I don't want to give it any of my content, which is what I just said is the ethical way to do it. But I don't want to, because what if it's sharing that everywhere and I'm losing my rights, right? So,
It was kind of in a tickle in my back of my brain, but it's just like I haven't really even unlocked that piece yet, right? I don't think
yeah,
we have thought about that. Some people have, obviously. Some
yeah,
authors have, especially those with a big backlist, I
yes,
think
yeah,
specifically. But something I kind of want to talk about was the Romance Writers of America. That's kind of why I reached out with
yeah,
to you
yeah,
at the beginning, was because they got a little bit of pushback.
yeah,
Because people were having some very strong feelings about an algorithm kind of watering down and distilling art, kind of like what we're saying, just kind of scraping what's all out there and distilling it into the most like popular and or possibly sellable things, depending what you're looking for. However, I'm already hearing about AI uses in publishing and other entertainment industries. Like I said, it was kind of like but I'm hearing more of like it used in a broader sense.
yeah,
Not for like creating games or anything, but
yeah,
but
yeah,
like yeah, for copy and stuff. So for me personally, I feel like it could be utilized as like a tool, kind of like what I said before, just
absolutely.
like not as a crutch or a method,
Yeah,
right? Like you were saying, the AI
yes,
generator, write me a
yep,
book in a
yep,
weekend. So how can writers approach AI in a way that enhances their
yeah,
process without becoming too dependent or falling into the trap of
yeah.
having technology create the book?
I think it's so important because we've got people who are either using it willy-nilly without any thought just so excited and using it for everything. And then we've got people completely avoiding it because it's scary. And I think we need to be somewhere in the middle. We need to be informed and wise, consider our ethical standards and our values and what do we, legally as well. We need to now start considering some legal things because these court cases are going to set a precedence. And I think that's partly why Amazon is starting to monitor it, is because as soon as those all get settled, they can pull every single AI generated book. They're not going to want copyright infringement books selling on their platform, and they'll be able to pull everyone's books who've used it for art or for content. And all of those people become susceptible to being sued. Every author who's used it can be sued for copyright infringement and probably already could, right? It's just that the people who have the money are setting the precedent, like New York Times. They can afford to do these battles for us. But then once it's established, right, we've got that. So how do we use it not as a crutch and not unethically or illegally and still benefit because we can? And I'll do a little shameless plug here. My friend and I created a video series. We have a free toolkit that I want to give all of your listeners. And that free toolkit talks about how to use AI in each phase of writing. So, or in each phase of publishing. So writing, book production, and publishing. And there's a strategic prompt that we include in a PDF with that. So there's a little video, and then there's how we use it strategically. And then we took that into a whole video series for only, like for stupid amount of dollars, like cheap, stupid amount of dollars, because we want to make it accessible, is a 3-part video series where we spend about 90 minutes to 2 hours on that phase. So all on writing. How can I enhance it with my writing ethically and safely? How can I use it to assist in book production? Ethically and safety, writing or marketing and publishing, book business, all of it. So that's available for people who really want to take that deep dive. So that middle space is in your writing, right? You have the concept, even if you've just written your first draft and you're like, I don't swear, but the shitty first draft is so appropriate. And that's Anne Lamott, right? She talks about the shitty first draft. And then Brene Brown talks about the stormy first draft, but stormy isn't strong enough. So if you've got your shitty first draft and you're like, I don't know where to go from here. Is it structured right? What is even my outline? Maybe you wrote it and you didn't even outline it. You can plug those things into AI and say, can you help me make this, what's the readability of this? Or can you help me make this sentence or this section better and see how it can do? It shouldn't be your editor, but it can definitely be like your coach. That's how I think of it. I'm putting myself out of a job here. You've got a free writing coach right there with you. If you're feeling stuck on a point, you can ask it for assistance to help you overcome what feels like writer's block to you in that moment. If you need some creative ideas around how to move something, you can do that. What we're trying not to do is have it create content for you. But can it mess with your content? Absolutely. Maybe you don't even have the shitty first draft yet. You can't get past the outline. You can give it concepts like, here's my storyline. Here are the points that I know. Can you help me like lay out an outline of how this might look? Whether, again, doesn't matter the genre or the audience. And then just see what it does with what you give it. The safety piece is that as of now, this recording and my understanding is that everything that we put into a private conversation with AI does not become scrapable. So if you're sharing your content with your little private chat, like say ChatGPT, and you're putting your stuff in there, that is private between you and ChatGPT. It's not sharing anything you say as a resource to other people. It's just scraping what's published on the internet, which is, both of those would be a problem. But at least in our little context, we can share what we need to say and do it safely. Another thing that we teach in that video series is how to train it with your voice. So you put your own content in there and you have it like sum up what your voice is as a writer. And it'll give you this whole description of you, Riley did it. And we'll save that, put it aside. And then when I'm writing my author bio or a book description, I can plug that back in and say, using my voice, which you described as this, help me turn this book description. You better make it better using my voice. So there's so many ways. I know I kind of hopped around, but there's so many ways where it can assist us in every phase of the journey, in overwhelming amounts of phases of the journey, that it saves us time, it saves us money, and it helps improve like overall the quality of what we're doing. But what I find most people don't know is how to ask it the right questions. So I'll get people who say, well, it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't give me anything that's helpful. I'm like, did you know that you can ask it to ask you questions to get more information from you so it knows what you like? People just don't know what they don't know. And if you can ask the strategic questions and know what it can do for you, you get a much better response. And therefore, right, you get to enhance your whole experience with it.
And I'm sure as a story coach, you know this, but we are always told as writers, because we can't take on everything. I know,
Yeah.
and we do that even as like women. I think at moms, sometimes we just want to take it all, right? Take it on all
Yeah.
and we'll be fine. But we realistically, we can't do that. So we kind of
Oh,
automate where we can, or
yeah.
kind of like, or outsource.
Yep.
Right, wherever we can. That's what we're
Yeah.
told to do. A lot of people
Yeah.
say that. So I feel like it's just a way to outsource that. Things
Yeah.
I'm not
Yes.
good
Yeah.
at. Not writing. I'm good at writing. I like to write, but
Yeah.
it's the sometimes the copy editing
Uh-huh.
or the
Yep.
market pieces, right? Now I
Yes.
do love that. I do love market pieces, but like things like, okay, help me make this a little more buzzier or
Yep.
condense this a little bit more for
Yep.
me. Here's the copy, but I just need to condense this down to my elevator pitch. So
Yeah.
like things like that, or I'm even hearing comp titles. People are like trying
Yes.
to
Yes.
find
I was going
comp
to say
titles
that.
with it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
see, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm hearing it's used for a lot too. Or keywords. Help me find keywords
Yep.
for this for my new book that I'm putting
Yeah.
out. So things
Yeah.
like that. There are
Yeah.
ways to utilize it. It's
Even
just
using like I'm sorry.
go
I didn't mean,
ahead. No, yeah, you were saying like writers don't know what they just don't
I don't
know.
know.
So they don't know
No.
they could use it for those things.
Uh-uh. And I think that there's so many courses now, like write your book in an hour, using AI or write your book in a weekend. And it's missing, again, the humanity piece of it. It's stealing property from other people, but it also just trains us to think the only way it can help us is by writing our books. Whereas there's so many other ways it can help us without actually writing our book for us, which does sound so nice, doesn't it? If you've got a book on your heart for 20 years and someone tells you you can write it in an hour with this incredible service, like how is that not enticing? Of course it
Hmm.
is, unless you realize you could be sued, right? Like, oh, less enticing, but they're not teaching that in the course.
Yeah.
They're just like, give me your money and I'll teach you how to use AI. So I think what people don't realize is you can have it create a content like a schedule for you. I want to write this many books by this time. How many words do I need to write every day? I want to take Saturdays off, and this is the amount of time I have. Like you can give it all that information and it'll create a schedule for you. You can even tell it to put it in a chart, put that in a table for me with these headers, and it'll create a table. You can do that with your content marketing, right? Your social media posting, you can have it create a calendar for you. Then you can go through, great, here's my calendar. On this particular week, I want to focus on this topic. What are some hook ideas that I can use for this topic? And it'll fill in your content calendar for you so that you're just like, oh, I have what I need. But again, I think because of all these ads that are telling us that the only thing it does is write a book for us in an hour, is that we miss the incredible amount of other things that it can do, where we get to keep our integrity and our voice in the process, yet still have a smoother, faster, less expensive journey with this coach that's alongside us, where we can lean into it and ask it questions and get help when we need it, but we still own our author process.
And you kind of mentioned it earlier, like if we feed our information into it, it's right now, for now at
Yeah,
least,
yep,
it's
yep.
private.
Yeah,
Mhm.
my son talks to it like it's a best friend. He asks it
Oh.
everything. He asks for synonyms. But this is the other thing to note. I think it changed to 2022, but the content that it scrapes is up through the year 2022. So for those people also who are writing books that are supposed to be so relevant and current, you're always going to be 2 years old. Like the information you're getting is 2 years old. So
Mhm.
even in that idea of like, I'm just going to have it do the work for me. Yeah, 2 year old work. Like a lot gets updated in 2 years. And so, again, somebody might be positioning themselves as an expert in something and really exposing themselves depending on what it comes up with.
That's very, very true. And especially in the world of publishing, which changes like so
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
There's always like new trends, new things,
Yep.
new things
Yep.
going on. So new formats, things like that. So like it's always going to be a little bit behind. So as
Yeah.
far as you want to stay, just keep that in mind, at least if you're
Yeah.
playing around with it.
It's probably
Um,
still writing vampire werewolf
That's what I'm
books.
thinking of. Like it's probably right in like back in the Twilight era. So like when that was popular, what in 2018 or something like
Yeah.
that?
Maybe it's developed a
2019.
little bit.
Yeah, it's in my yeah, probably a little bit more nowadays. But do you think there's also like a good gut check for authors, so we don't kind of fall into using too much AI in the process or relying too heavily on it?
I
Yeah.
just feel like it could creep on you real fast if you're not careful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. Is there a good gut check? Yes. And I think some people are more in tune with that than others.
Hmm.
So there's a level of discipline. And again, integrity, I'm just going to use that word, even knowing there that that might look different to different people, but it's a value of mine that I am who I say I am and that I can hold my head high and I'm not hiding things. I don't like feeling like, ooh, I have to, I don't like room for doubt or question marks in my life is like, is that good or not good? So I tend to err on if I'm not sure, then it can wait. So that might be if you've got like a check in your mind, like, is this good or not? Like, I just would wait. Like, we're not good at waiting. We're not
That's
great at
very
waiting.
fair. Yeah, we're very impatient, especially now that we've trained our brains quite a bit
Yeah,
with phones.
I know. And one of my best friends, like, I'll reach out to him and say, hey, should I do this thing or should I send this email? And if he doesn't respond quick enough, I'll just send it, you know? And he's like, could you stop? Like, could you just stop? Because we could have made that. Could you just stop? Right. And so I'm learning to stop. I'm learning that if he doesn't answer right away, I don't have to send that email for a
Mhm.
while. Like I can wait to get feedback. So that might be my encouragement too, is if there's just any, I call it like a check in your spirit, right? If there's any check in your gut, any kind of like, I don't feel 100% here, but I'm not even exactly sure what feels a little bit off, then run it by somebody, right? Send me a message. Like, what do you think? Yeah, go rewatch this. Like, just, I want to say, like, I'm so aware as I say this that this is also part of my wiring to care about, but there's this living in alignment, this integrity, and I don't like to do things that feel out of alignment. And so if I'm not sure, I just am trying to train myself to wait so that I don't regret it later. And this is an area that has some consequences, right? It's not the same as someone's going to be disappointed in you, right? That's enough for some people to deter them from a thing. But this is, you could ultimately be sued by
Mhm.
somebody if they recognize their content, art, or text in your work. Is it worth it to you? But I want to be careful that doesn't scare people away from using a really great tool. It's just that's the gut check, right? Am I still working with my own content or am I veering into, hey, I wrote this paragraph. Can you write the next paragraph for me?
Mhm.
I don't know what to write next. I'm stuck. Could you write the next paragraph for me? Well, now it's not playing with your content, it's having to generate content. So these kinds of things where you start to step over the fence into, can you create a new thing for me, even if it's based on my old thing? You can't be sure it's not taking that information from somewhere else. That's a hard one to answer. That's probably why I'm a little more wordy about it, but it's that gray area, right? Where each person has to go, where do I feel good? What does integrity look like for me? If it's not integrity, then what is like legally? What kinds of
Mhm.
protections do you care about having in place? And are you okay with what might be coming down the line? And what's the end result? That's probably a big one. Like I think for people who are writing their book overnight, like they just, oh, I can make money now.
Mhm.
Versus that person who's really wanting to make an impact on the world, I feel like they are a little more drawn to investing themselves into their personal storytelling. Anyway, that's like now I'm going to start exploring out in the world with all the what ifs. So I'll bring it back.
But I love how you say that it's like you're aligning right with that integrity
Yeah.
piece. It's I think
Yeah.
it is up to us as authors, like
Yep.
where like does it fall in line with our values? Kind of like you
Yeah.
said, as who we want to be as authors, as
Yeah.
creatives. Like
Yeah.
does that really align with who we are and what kind of product we want to put out in the world?
And then the feedback we get. So you make a good point because I came across an illustrator that I don't know personally, but she posted in one of the Facebook groups I'm in that she is an illustrator herself and that she recently used AI to create her book. So she was like, I wrote a book using AI and I had it do my artwork. And of course, artwork's beautiful. AI creates beautiful work because the people who originally created it did a great job. Right? And it's
Yeah,
great at mixing it
fair.
together. And most of the time, there are times where I've played with it, not to use in a book or anything, but just to play with it. It like puts teeth funny places if you zoom in. It can be hilarious.
Extra hands, right?
I'm
Stuff like
still figuring
that.
out. I'm like,
Yeah.
is that the other day I had like I was using pictures and it had like added teeth to the lips instead of
Oh my
inside the
God.
mouth. And I was like, that's special.
Well,
How come everyone else
horrifying.
posts these like beautiful pictures and I get teeth in the lips, you know? But and it was so interesting because so being a creative, being an artist, felt very comfortable creating a book, not using her own art, like creating an illustrated children's picture book where AI generated her words and generated the art. And then she was so proud of the outcome that she was sharing it publicly in this place. So she had no, I don't know that she expected the feedback she got. I don't know, but it was very
Mm.
celebratory.
Oh, okay,
And
good.
the comment section was full of like, you didn't write a book.
Mm.
You cannot put your name on that book. You didn't illustrate that book. Why would you sell yourself out? It was like full of all of this feedback from other creatives because we're all in this together, right? So all these other people are like, what are you doing? And stop saying that you wrote a book. So there's a lot of feedback, and you've alluded to
Mm.
this in the world around us that isn't excited about reading books that robots have written or illustrated. And people were adamant that she needed, and she said, like, oh, no, no, my name's not on the book. You can see it's not on the cover. So now we're just producing books with no human spirit that we can't put our
Mm.
names on, stealing the artwork of other people. But she didn't, I don't
Mm.
think I wouldn't say she didn't have integrity. I think she didn't know what she didn't know. I think she was probably
Right.
surprised because she was having fun. Like, look at this new way I can create art. And she just didn't know. She didn't know. Now she
Mhm.
knows.
Well, exactly. And exactly, like you said, people don't know what they don't know. So
Yeah.
that's why I really wanted to have this chat, if nothing else, because it is illuminating to find out, like, okay, where is the lines and where do I draw the lines? And I think that's where a lot of us have to ask those questions of
Yeah.
like, here is how you can use it. Here are the consequences, if
Yes.
depending how you use it,
Yeah.
and where do you fall? Where do we fall in all of that? Something I did because I did tell AI what
Yeah.
I was what we were interviewing on, and
Yeah.
all the questions are by me, but this one in particular came from AI. So I'm just going to prompt that with
I
this.
love it.
So, how do you suggest authors determine where to draw creative, commercial, and ethical boundaries with AI? I kind of reworded it a little bit to kind of be more in context with some of my questions, but I mean, basically, this one was, I would say, this one was AI generated. So it came straight
Yeah.
from AI just to kind of see what AI questions AI asks.
Yeah. Well, for example, it asked about commercial use, right? Um,
Yes.
we're having a conversation where you generated questions. Maybe those questions have been asked somewhere else in the world,
Hmm.
but you're not claiming that this is your original idea and question and creating a whole book around it. And then like, hey, now that's a great question. Can you pretend that there was an author conversation that I had and we like fake it? And it's different. So I think there's a place where you can use that as AI generated, but you're not publishing it. You're not putting it out for commercial use, right?
Hmm.
And even in the case of a single question, that's different than creating content that
Hmm.
you're selling. So I would say for the commercial aspect, all of us writing and illustrating are hoping to make money on our books, and therefore we sell them. And that is where legal issues become the problem. If you are making commercially available some portion of someone else's intellectual property and they catch it, you have a lawsuit potentially, right? So
Hmm.
commercial is a big one. If you're using AI to generate email newsletters, for example, that's kind of different. It's not commercial. Now that feels more like ethics, where someone might say, "Do I feel good about it, like writing my email for me? Or is there a way where I can prompt it with, here are the things I want to say. Can you just take that and write the email for me and then you tweak it?" I think that's a little more of that gray area where you're not selling it. It's not coming across per se as your expertise, depending on the newsletter, right? Okay, here's an example. I run writers' retreats, as I've mentioned, and I have a whole conversation, an ongoing thread that stays saved where my AI coach and I have talked about the planning of this retreat. And there are times where I'll have it help me write the social media post that I'm going to put out
Hmm.
there.
Okay,
I
I
keep
see.
it in the same thread because it always refers back to what we've already said. So I don't have to keep re-explaining myself. I'm like, okay, I'm working on the second retreat now and the registration is finally live. Can you help me come up with like my 5 next posts on promoting this? And it will generate content for that. I feel okay with that. I'm not selling it as someone else's. It's about my retreat, right? I've kind of given it the content, but it might be writing my post for me.
Hmm.
So that's where it's like, okay, it's not commercial. Now that falls into that gray area where people have to decide, does this feel in alignment or out of alignment with how I want to show up and who I want to be in my spaces? Creative piece, again, like, okay, I understand I can't cite any of them. So all the people who want citations, like go look them up. My understanding is that things like dementia and Alzheimer's and other sort of cognitive degenerative experiences as we age can be delayed or prevented by continually learning. I think the more and more we allow convenience and comfort to override our creativity, like I can have a book out in an hour versus like putting ourselves through the struggle that is such an important part of writing and publishing, we are handing over our cognition. This is what I think that we're taking away from ourselves the new experiences and the struggles that we need that keep our brain alive and young and thinking critically. I used this recently, but I think of the movie Wall-E and how all these people ended up in chairs and they couldn't even walk anymore because sitting in the chairs, they got so large. And I think we can atrophy our brains and our creativity in that same way if we keep handing over our own thinking. And I also think to throw in another image of, how many creatures have to struggle from their cocoon or from the egg. And if you go in and rescue them and you pull them out, they actually either end up dying or being maimed because it was the struggle that strengthened them to exist outside of that shell or that cocoon, right? And I think there's something there related to our creativity as well, that when we hand over that wrestling and we choose the easy thing, we're maiming ourselves and we're slowly killing the parts of our brains that we really do like and want and will give us the longevity of thought and presence that we want and that our families want from us, right? So that's the creativity piece. I would say it's not just the value of the human voice, which again I champion, but I think there's a long-term effect that people aren't thinking about in all of the excitement of this new incredible tool, that we can hand over too much and end up who knows how many years from now not being able to think for ourselves, not being able to be creative. Gosh, what a dark gray world we'll be in.
Right. And I think there is another parallel there with Wall-E, not only atrophying our creativity and our brain, but also everyone was the same, living the same life, looked the same, acted the
Girl,
same. So, like, this is
the
what AI
uniqueness.
will do, right?
Good. Girl, so good.
I could do
I
parallels when
love
I need to.
it. It was so good. We lose all of our individuality and our uniqueness and the things that make us part of the choir. That's how I like to think that when
Hmm.
you have a choir, it's voices harmonizing together with a purpose, but each unique verse, but also voice needs to be part of that to make it happen, right? And that's the importance of our stories too. I'll have people say, well, this trope has been overused, for example, like it's saturated the industry, or the topics, themes, forgiveness. There's so many books on forgiveness. Who's going to care about my book? And I'll be like, look around. Are we all forgiving yet? Like, no? Then we could use another voice in the choir. Like, we need more. It's not about competition with other forgiveness books. It's about maybe it's your voice, your uniqueness, your wiring that is going to be heard by that person that hasn't yet grasped it or embodied it through everyone else's voices. And so, to your point, that parallel is so important because it begins to reduce and minimize the variety of voices that are out there, in which the variety of readers need to hear it to be able to really embody it and be impacted by it. And again, I use forgiveness, which is nonfiction, but these are all things that we catch in fiction as well, right? Fiction is just like nonfiction, lights up our brain so uniquely and gives us a visceral experience with what we're reading as though we're living it. And so we get to have all this diversity of life experience through the different voices that we engage as readers. And I love what you said. So then we're like reducing that variety for us and minimizing our opportunities to have life experience. And that's so impactful on our brain too.
I think of that all the time. Like, I don't know why, but it's just one of those things that like live rent free in my brain. It's just like, I don't want to give up individuality for this,
Oh,
for any kind of technology, really. But
yeah,
I like, everyone, and that's something I'm trying to teach my kiddo too, is just like the
yeah.
individuality, your individual voice is so important.
So
So don't
important.
ever lose that, you be
Yeah.
sure you don't ever lose that. So we touched on commercial a bit,
Yeah.
but let's look at the flip side of it. Because we kind of teased that earlier about like authors protecting their work. We do want to protect our work with AI going about, and like especially somebody with like a large backlist who might be on like best-selling lists or award-winning lists, and they
Yeah.
might scrape that and say like, well, here's some award-winning material right here,
Yes.
you know? So like how do we protect our work as authors from AI? Or is there a way to do that?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And I don't know that I have the complete answer. So if someone does, please let us know. Like, yeah,
Well,
I've
it
got
is
my,
evolving. I know
it
it's
is evolving.
technology
Well, even
every
still,
day, even
like
even by
full,
next week when I post this
I know,
episode.
I know. But even just the full protection of what already exists. I think in my mind, I'm resigned right now to knowing that there's not a lot I feel I can do to keep AI from scraping from my material, whether it was a
Mhm.
blog post or a social media post or books I've published. And so the most energy I want to give that, and maybe that's what it comes down to, is that I use Google Alerts for my book titles. And that's a real simple thing. If you Google search Google Alert, it's easy to tell it what you want to be alerted about. So I get an email anytime any of my book titles names are used anywhere, my kids' names, because I also want to know if like they're being exploited on the internet by name. I want to know my name. So there's things in there that I get alerted to. And often in that case, I can see if someone is like pirating my book, which happens sometimes, or at least pretending to. I don't know if they have it or not. And then there's a really simple Google form, like a copyright infringement form that I fill in to report that site. And I will dedicate that amount of energy to it. But that's not scraping my whole book. It's not like, tell me if someone's using my content mushed into AI. I don't know how to know that other than someone catching it for me and saying, hey, this book sounds a lot like yours,
Mhm.
or this, like I did see a book recently that had a very similar cover to mine, but is that just because they went through our book categories and saw, oh, this book is best selling. I'm going to try to have a cover looking like it, so I might be best selling too. I don't know that
Mm.
authors will do that, right? Market research and that kind of thing. I don't know how to 100% or maybe even 20% protect what I've already put out there other than using Google Alerts for book titles, and that's about all I want to invest in it. I think I could try to read every book that's in the same genre as mine and see, but I'm not interested in using my time that way. I'm not an artist. I think I would feel a little different. No, I'd still not know how to do it. It's just more visual, so people can easily see versus having to read a whole book. If they see a page in a book that's their artwork, that's easier to catch. So the place where I know that I can safely put my work is inside of my AI chat, wherever I'm having those chats. Mostly that's Chat GPT, but I'll use Momentum Dash has an AI feature. There's some place everybody has an AI feature now, right? Um, so it should be private in there, but I think I don't think that should scare people away. It can. So if someone's like, no, I'm not publishing anything anywhere anymore on the internet, not just books, but blog posts and articles, and because I don't want it to happen. It was happening before AI. I had Google
Yeah.
Alerts set up before AI, right? Like there's just hackers and they get stuff. And I have to keep my focus on the people that I want to impact with my work, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, adult or children. Okay, there might be these few people on the side who are exploiting me, but I'll give them the amount of energy I want to give that, but my focus is on the people that I want to impact. And so I just keep my attention and energy there and serving that population of people, or there's a few populations. So I don't know. I mean, that may not be everybody's response, but I feel okay to keep doing my work and putting it out there because I'm trying to help people. Either give them an escape or give them camaraderie or, develop resilience in the kids of brains of kids, whatever it is. It's just been my approach to it is I'm
Yeah.
just going to keep trying to help people and not get distracted by all of this. I just want to make sure I'm not participating in it.
I mean, I think we've all either heard horror stories or know someone personally who has had something plagiarized of theirs, and it didn't even have to be online, right? It could have been at a
Yes.
at in school on in a class or
Yeah.
a research paper or anything. Even I've even heard of people who went to writers groups. It's one of those things of like this has happened before. It's
Yeah.
going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
when there's a will, there's a way, unfortunately, even with the bad
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
it's just how do we protect ourselves as
Yeah.
authors if we're trying to, what are the things to look out for? Because like you said, piracy was, things we've always been kind of hyper vigilant of or aware of that we kind of need to keep on our radar. This is just another kind of kind of addendum to that. It's
Yeah.
just like this is also something we want to put on our radar. And I love that you have Google alerts because that is really important to do, I think, especially if like someone's trying to use parts of your writing.
And I would definitely research anything like that. So if you're using it to help you come up with book titles, which I will use it, or article titles,
Yeah.
still go take what it gives me and see if those exist. Like I'm not going to just be like, oh, great title, AI, thank you so much. I'm going to just go use that. But that's the case too whenever I think of a title, even out of my own brain. I'm not going to believe I'm the most original person that's ever thought a thought. And so probably if I think this is a great title idea, it might be out there. So doing the research to your point too, just to verify that things can be used, and then
Mhm.
being mindful that some things are trademarked and some aren't. Like titles actually are not trademarked unless someone has
Mhm.
gone and done that work. And that's like a whole, they don't usually get approved, usually under circumstances. Like if the title has become a brand, that might be different. So, titles you can use, but copyright, this is actually just a good point for writers in general, is that copyright is yours the moment you start writing something. So this could tie into that safety piece is that, oh no, I haven't formally registered the copyright on anything. Like, what if they take my idea or my first draft and now they run off with it and they become amazing? Well, your first draft has a timestamp on it on your computer.
Mhm.
And you, if you found that, could take that to the court and say, this is my intellectual property. I can prove it with this digital document. Or if you've got the napkin you scribbled your rough draft on and date it, you own copyright the moment you put things down somewhere. You can register that copyright with the Copyright Office, which is not a bad idea, but it's optional. You have it even if you don't register it. So from that place of protection too, people might be thinking, but it's fair game until I publish. No, it's not. So even if you're
Mm.
sharing with your critique group over email, right, your draft, and somehow your draft ends out into the world and someone sells it and they're a best-selling author and they're making all their money on your initial draft, you could go after them with your Word document, your Pages document, your napkin, to show that you're the originator of that story. So there is an element of safety there. Again, I think each author has to determine how much energy and money and time they want to go to chase these things down. But if I recognized that one of my drafts became a book, I'm absolutely going to be like, knock, knock. Hi, we can go to court or you can take this down because I actually own the copyright to this, which you do. And authors don't realize that. Like,
Mhm.
they don't realize that the moment you start putting something down, you own that as your intellectual property. Now go find an attorney. I'm not one. I feel like you got to say that disclaimer. Like, go find an attorney. As of
Yeah.
now, this is what I
Yeah.
understand, having published a lot of books, is that that's how copyright works. That's why you can put it, on your copyright page that you own the copyright, because you do. Um, that's why we put copyright on our websites. I don't formally go register it. But I have copyright of everything on my website, right? And that's what the internet AI is pulling, is these copyrighted materials and using them in AI generated content.
Since we're kind of talking a little bit about copyright too,
Mhm.
we're all about transparency.
Yeah.
So, or we should, at least I am. I know I
Yeah,
am. So
absolutely.
and I know Amazon, like we talked about a little bit before, like Amazon now has indicators on product pages
Yep, yep,
that kind of confirm if
yep.
AI was used in a book. In fact, I have one of my really close girlfriends was saying like, I have this beautiful cover that was kind of used with the help of AI, but I just can't use it yet because you got to put that indicator, right? But for now, I don't think that it differentiates between covers and writing from what I understand, right?
You're correct.
For now, in the
Correct.
year of our Lord 2024, right now. So,
Correct.
so that could change. So, but it's just kind of a catch-all indicator. But what can authors do for their part to make it clear if and how AI was used in their writing?
Okay, when you're setting up your book in KDP,
Mhm.
for example, and it has that indicator that you can hover over something that pulls up their policy and you can read the policy, which I've
Oh,
done.
okay.
And so they exclude anything that's AI assisted. So if you used it to help you with the outline or help you generate your book description based on what you gave it, like it doesn't count any of that AI generated, and you don't have to toggle that part in there. What they're looking for is, did it create the content for you, artwork or text? And I don't know that they'll ever separate that because it doesn't matter. It's all intellectual property that's being stolen. Like whether it's the cover art or whether it's the interior text, it's somebody else's property that's being used. So I don't know if they would ever differentiate or why they would need to, because it would all be considered infringement and have to be pulled, I think.
Mm.
Now, as far as like, this is my image, and I played around with my photo using, this is where it gets great because I don't know exactly where it's pulling all the things, right? But like, maybe it put me in a suit dress instead of my sweats, then I'm using that for my author photo. Like, was there a picture that someone owns the copyright to in their suit and I now just put my head in it? I don't know. Those are the things that I think authors would need to investigate there. But what they're looking for is, did you use AI anywhere to create any aspect of your book for you, whether it's content or images being used, as opposed to, was it your writing coach? Was it your book production copywriter? Was it your, like, did it, again, I use that language at the beginning, assisting versus generating. That's the exact language of KDP as well, and what they're looking for.
Gotcha.
And I know right now it's a toggle and people could choose not to be honest and not toggle it, but we all know that KDP scans like all of the books because that's where a lot of our algorithm comes from too, not just our keywords and our categories, but how much we use those in our content. And so I think that could potentially be a different issue for people if they're caught using AI generated content, but they didn't toggle it.
Listen, you can lie to the readers, you can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to the great Amazon. So I'm sorry, guys.
The Amazon machine is not going to believe
Ooh,
you.
they
I'm
are
surprised they even let us
not.
toggle it, honestly. I'm like, why aren't you just flagging it on your own? But
Right?
they're letting us self-identify for now.
I know. They're like, I'm gonna give you the choice if to be honest or not.
Yeah.
Kind of like a
Yeah.
big like a parent to their wayward
Yeah.
children.
And you know what, to this point, also, I think this means that as we hire outsourcers for different things, these are questions we need to be asking. I might, in all good
Yeah.
intention, hire a
Oh
cover
my
designer
God.
to do my book, and they use AI, and I don't know. And now I've published my book, and so I even had to be aware with my network to say, I won't accept any AI generated work. And if that means I can't hire you for this project anymore, then I can't. And so why wouldn't these outsourcers be using the tool to make their jobs easier? But now we are innocently hiring them trusting that they're still creating things like they used to. And maybe they're not. And now we are implicated because it was a work for hire, right? And now our book is being published and flagged, and we're being sued just because we didn't check to make sure that what we are getting wasn't AI generated.
That is a fantastic point I didn't even think of. But yeah, of course. I mean, you wanna try to make money faster, right? Like what we're talking about, like automating certain aspects of your work. But like that's something to definitely understand as far as like cover artists or anyone who gives you feedback. If you're paying for anybody for to help you give feedback, to make sure that you are getting kind of what you're paid for,
Yeah.
right? You wanted
Yeah.
someone's eyes on it, a
Yeah.
person, not a bot.
Yeah, well, that's it. An
Hell,
editor, are they throwing it in and asking it? Because AI is not an editor.
exactly.
I
Well,
mean, I'm an
exactly.
editor. I have to edit
Hmm.
AI sometimes where I'm like, what? Why'd you, what? But I mean, it's a great writer. It's a great writer and it gets a lot correct, but we shouldn't be using it for editing. And so if you send it off to an editor who's like, I don't have to edit anymore, I've got AI,
Oh,
like, you want to know, right? Is this,
hmm.
you need to know. And so these are questions now that we haven't had to think to ask before that now we need to ask. I need a cover designer and I need one who does not use AI to generate images. I need an editor and one who edits, not
Hmm.
uses. I mean, Grammarly is fine. But then I had someone ask about Grammarly AI. It'll help you rewrite parts of your book. And so someone was like, is that better or not better? I'm like, it always is going to come down to the same. Is it generating content for you or is it enhancing and assisting you with your content? I don't think it matters the brand name behind the OpenAI. It's how are you using it?
And publishing already moves fast as it is. Well, it kind of moves fast and moves slow, right? In
Yeah.
different aspects.
Yeah.
When we're talking about technology, I tend to think of like the invention of the ebook and the rise of self-publishing. People
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
poo-pooed it at the beginning. I'm not going to do that, but people who were early innovators kind
Yeah.
of, saw a boom from that, but also kind of, but it did adapt. We
Yep.
all adapted to it eventually.
Yeah.
So it makes me consider what the future may hold for like the book
Yeah.
market regarding like AI, like you said, the AI assistant of
Yeah.
writing. 2022
Yeah.
is when it's pulling back from, but like it's just going to get better, right? It's only
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
it's like the worst it's going to be right now
Yeah.
is
I
the worst
agree.
it's going to be. And it's just going to get better and change and evolve as we go forward. So, in your opinion, do you think AI will become more prevalent and help mold where the publishing industry goes? I mean, that's a
Yeah.
big thought.
I do because I as much as I use it, my very good friend who helped me co-create the workshop series and the toolkit,
Mhm.
every time I sit under him in any of his teachings or workshops that he does, I always learn something new that I can do with AI. And and I feel like I know a lot. And that's just because it's always adding to what I mean, it's now reading audiobooks, right? Like, are we going to have narrators
Yeah.
anymore? Because I'm like, hopefully they'll start to sound more human. Because I love the idea of like having audiobooks that I didn't spend, $3,000 to record and let AI read it for me. But what about all those voices whose whole career is based on the the skill that they've developed in reading books engagingly, right? It's fun to watch some of them on TikTok. Like they're just mesmerizing to listen to. But now you can see that AI is available to do audiobooks for you. And you can choose from all these different voices and accents, right? That's just an example of, I think, the things I wouldn't even thought that it could do that are going to keep coming. We're like, it can do that too. It can do that too. Is it going to be running a bookstore online somewhere? Like, so I do think it's going to continue to grow and at an exponential rate. I don't think we can have any real concept of what it will be able to do. And I think that's why what you said also is true right now, that this is the worst it's going to get, in the sense that everyone's reeling, trying to figure out, how do I protect my work? How do I get compensated for my work and credited for my work? And we just haven't known because there's been no oversight, no
Mhm.
body to regulate it. And I don't know if there is one that can. It feels like it's those movies we all watched about the robots that turned on us and took over the world. Like, why? Part of me is like, why have we not watched all the movies? Why are we doing this? The robots always win. But then at the other side, there's like so many incredible things it can do. So yeah, I think we haven't even seen a fraction of what it will be able to do. And then I'm curious to see what kind of regulations and things come around it. And I think eventually, like you said, I think ebooks and self-publishing is a great idea. We all start to kind of find our grounding and go, okay, this is how it's shaped us and changed us. And then here's what to avoid and how to use it well. And that's what I would encourage your listeners to do. This might have sounded overwhelming and at times scary. Like, I don't want to get sued and I don't want my work to be scraped and all these things, but it's not going away. There are some incredible ways that you can use it to enhance your experience. And so I would encourage all of your listeners who are feeling that way to, now you're informed. This has been a very informative conversation. And now think about the ways that you feel good trying it out. And, put off to mention Alzheimer's by learning something new. If that study is sound and I'm not making it up, to, just to do the new thing and see how it can enhance what you're doing. And again, I'm so value driven that I'm thinking like always through the lens of the impact you want to make. It's about the people you're trying to serve. And so in what way can this tool help you serve them even better and you not give yourself up in the process? But where can you save time and cost and improve something that's going to ultimately serve the reader that you're trying to reach?
Absolutely. And I think that is a great, great note to end on. So we have talked so much. You've given us so much to think about as far as like AI and like, where it could go, what it could do, right? And like how to use it in an ethical way. So where
Yeah.
can listeners find your books and how can they connect with you?
Yeah. So I am on TikTok where I give writing tips just about every day at Marcy Pusey. I'm on Instagram at Marcy Marie because I think I set up a Marcy Pusey account a while ago and I don't remember and I can't get in. So it's there. I just can't get it. MarcyPusey.com. My press site, Mira Mare Ponte Press. We'll just make sure that's in the notes somewhere. .com. And then I have given two TEDx talks and they've been on, the first one is on the brain and story and how important it is that we understand the impact that we can make on someone's brain and that we're good stewards of that responsibility. And the other one is really on trauma and perception and overcoming those things in our lives. So you can go watch those and find me online. And I've got the free toolkit that I'll make sure you have to give to your listeners. And then if anyone has any more questions, they can ask me.
Thanks so much to Marcy for joining the show. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That way, you're the first to hear new episodes when they drop. And if you get a chance, feel free to leave a review. It helps support the show and allows more opportunity to bring in all kinds of amazing guests. There's also a link to the YouTube channel in the description if you'd like to see the interviews with some of the guests and see them show off their lovely books. As always, stay safe, be well, and keep writing. Bye!